All right, everyone. I'm Rod Crandall, Chief Integration Officer at U.S. Advisors Insurance. You are tuning into our monthly broadcast that we call the Coach's Corner. And so we do these calls on the third Thursday of every month at 1 o'clock. We always try to bring you very good ideas and tips and tactics to be able to serve our clients better and drive more revenue to our practice. I think generically what we sell here at US Advisors is the intentional integration of insurance into a wealth advisor's practice. We find that over time it can be very hard to change behaviors, and we hope to bring you sort of some instructions and some roadmaps and some resources to be able to, again, do a better job for our clients and drive additional revenue to our practices. And so in the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be discussing a real life case study. And that is very significant. That was placed this year. I was intimately involved in this. We're going to walk through that a bit today, and hopefully you're going to be able to learn a lot about what we did, but more importantly, for you to be able to identify maybe some clients that need to have a similar conversation. So when we're coaching clients, meaning advisors in this case, on how to intentionally integrate insurance, what we generally do is we first ask you to identify a person that needs to have a conversation. And then if we can identify that person, we need to have an appropriate conversation with them, which is called positioning. So how do we position what our strategies do for them? And then ultimately, if we do that, what we've done is educate a client, and then we can move to implementation, or in some cases, you might be introducing that client to an expert, maybe like myself. So we sort of coach around identification, positioning, and then implementation and/or introduction. And so I know we have some new people with us today, which I'm very happy. So I know there's people that haven't worked with us. We want you to know that we're really built by advisors and for advisors. So that's really what makes us a little bit different. The people who founded our firm are in the wealth management space and the wealth advisory space. And so we understand your business. And we understand that in order to have a comprehensive financial planning practice, we really do need to satisfy the what ifs. What could break this plan, right? We need to stress test for retirement portfolio protection. We need to make sure we're protecting our income through life insurance and disability planning. We need to pay attention to estate planning, which we're going to describe a lot here today for our best clients. What we do find is that a lot of our best clients, their cost of taxes might be their biggest cost. And life insurance is kind of a protected asset class and has very unique attributes. And when used appropriately, understood correctly, and implemented in the context of a financial plan or an estate plan, now we can really get down to helping clients dramatically and helping them implement the insurance that they need. And so many clients and advisors alike are ignoring these very important planning conversations. And so that's why we exist, to be able to help make it easier for you to approach clients and have conversations. When we do this correctly, we're not selling to clients. What we're really doing is we are educating clients, and then we're asking them to consider whether or not these strategies ought to exist inside of their portfolio. And when we talk about it that way, it isn't so scary to the clients, and it's very palatable to the advisors, because you're used to talking about asset allocation. But I think you may not be used to thinking about insurance as an asset allocation item as well. It's just another bucket, again, with unique attributes. And so with that, I want to move forward and describe a little bit about the case that we're going to be discussing today. So we were able to place a $20 million survivorship case. Now, I don't want that to scare you off. You might be thinking, well, I don't have clients that would need to buy a $20 million survivorship case. And that may be true for some of you. What I want you to know is it's sort of that appropriately placed zero. Let's call it a $2 million survivorship case, and all of this would have been exactly the same, just with one less zero. And so you don't have to have a case this big for this kind of strategy to work, and how we approach our clients, what we talk about, etc. Okay, so don't let that scare you off. Now, by the way, you may have a case like this and you just didn't think that you did, right? Because when you have clients this big, what I always hear is, well, they don't need insurance. And in fact, you're going to hear that that was an objection that clients gave me. I met directly with these clients. They said, well, we don't need the insurance. Why would we buy it? So stay tuned for how I approach that. And by the way, they did buy it. What I want you to hear is that some of the best cases we have, if you just start with, would you like insurance? The answer is no, I do not want insurance because I do not need insurance. And then we move on, which means we never got to educate a client. We never got to have any consideration for that client. Okay, so we're going to talk about how did we develop this? Most importantly, what were the outcomes? There were significant outcomes for everybody involved, and most importantly, the client. Right? At US Advisors, we believe in the platinum rule, which is to the extent that I can understand and meet your needs, then ultimately my needs are met. And so we need to be focused on client outcomes. And I believe our real job is to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest. When we ask, do you want insurance? And they say no, with complete respect, that was the wrong question, because there's no way you can motivate somebody to take action if you just ask them if they want insurance. So we don't do that. We've got to do it a little bit different. So how do we do it? Well, I'm going to share that with you here today. So the first thing I want to start with is, how did we identify this case? I was talking with the advisor, and I'm sure most of you are aware that we're going to have a federal estate tax rollback in 2026. This is, if nothing changes from a law standpoint, it's going to roll back automatically. Well, this is really significant because today the estate tax limitation is about 12.9 million, almost 13 million per person, which means that estates that are under 26 million have no federal estate tax due today. However, in January 1 of 2026, that number is going to roll back to about 7 million a person, which means that any estate above 14 million is going to be subject to federal estate taxes. Okay. But what a lot of people are not aware is that many states have their own estate tax, and Minnesota does as well. And their tax is on a sliding scale from 13 to 16% for every dollar over 3 million. Okay, so that can be significant, and that can catch a lot of your clients as the state estate tax. I know many of you are advisors in Minnesota. To the extent that that is, well, anyone that you have that has a net worth of 3 million or more is potentially subject to the state estate tax. Does that mean they need to buy insurance? No. In fact, nobody has to buy insurance, including these clients. But we want to make them aware of it so we can educate them so they can consider what their options are, right? And by the way, this client had highly concentrated stock, makes up the bulk of the estate. It's a family business. They're doing really, really well. And so this is how we identified these people with the advisor, right? It was because of these ideas. So working in a little bit more about who the clients are, they ended up being 57-year-old couples. They've been working with the advisor for 20 years. Is that important? I think that's very important. It's not crucial that they work with an advisor for 20 years, but it's crucial that they work with an advisor who understands their situation and they have a high trust relationship. See, it's very, very hard to implement insurance structures absent high relationships because there's so much negativity around insurance companies, insurance policies, insurance agents. By the way, as an aside, this is why I make my living serving wealth advisors and being brought in situations like this where a high trust exists, but a high expertise in this area may not. And that's really crucial for my personal success because it's very hard, in my opinion, to gain trust and make an insurance recommendation at the same time. And so when I get brought in a very high trust relationship, I don't have to gain trust. It's my trust to lose, right? So I get to come in on what I call the trust train, and then I can focus on what? Just educating clients. When you educate clients and you ask them to consider what their options are, then they can make good decisions for themselves. And so these clients were part owners, again, as I indicated, in a large family business, paying very large dividends a year, like in the 7-figure realm, right? And their total estate value in 2023 was around $25 million. So first of all, do these people really have any kind of problem? Well, maybe, maybe not. I tend to think they have good problems. Do they need insurance? Why does anyone who has a $25 million estate need insurance? And my answer to that is that probably nobody needs it, but they may want it if they understood what it could do for them, especially as an asset allocation play, and especially to be able to mitigate and or pay for transfer taxes at death. In this case, estate taxes, but there's large qualified balances as well. And we have income taxes in addition to estate taxes. Okay, so we've got 25 million in 2023. So what potential issues did we consider? I mean, first of all, they didn't have any life insurance in force, right? They had none. Well, I just told you they didn't need it, but they had none in force. We indicated the high concentrated stock position. Well, I got to tell you, that concerned me much more than it concerned the client, right? Because that's what's driven everything is this highly concentrated stock. But I, like many of you, I mean, I dropped my securities license, but I had it for about 15 years. And I believe in diversification. And you look at all of the wealth, and it's like 90% in one stock position, right? So how do we feel about that? By the way, we're going to talk a little bit more about feelings. If you're going to do a great job in insurance recommendations, we have to touch the heart and we have to touch the mind. We have to ask clients what they care about and how they feel, right? So in addition to this stock concentration, they have current exposure to the Minnesota estate tax, and in 2026, they're going to be exposed to the federal tax. And as far as estate planning, they've done some. They put together the revocable living trust, which indicated, the guardianship for their kids and durable powers of attorney. They sort of did level one all appropriately, but they hadn't put together an irrevocable life insurance trust, which we helped them do, or I should say we help coordinate with their estate planning attorney to do so. We're going to talk a little bit more about that, but an irrevocable trust is a trust by which we can gift assets to and use those gifts in that trust to buy life insurance, and in so doing have removed the life insurance asset from the calculation of the gross taxable estate. And so at the end of the day, what that creates is what one estate planning attorney described to me as the tax-free zone. So we can create an asset that's non-correlated to the market, that's also income and estate tax-free by placing it in one of these irrevocable life insurance trusts, or often called ILITs. Okay. And so some other things to note, we already talked about the very high trust relationship. That's the most important thing to me, because again, otherwise it's an uphill battle. I remember before I started working with advisors exclusively and I was going to clients independently, there's been a couple of times where I thought I did a great job, got a client all the way down to saying yes, whereby they thanked me for their time and went to their own wealth advisor and had their wealth advisor implement it for them, right? And the reason for that was not because the wealth advisor was more of an expert, it was because the wealth advisor was the one who had the trust. And so I'm trying to pair the trust with the expertise. And by the way, there's people on our team, and I worked a lot with our advanced market people to put together the appropriate recommendations for this client as well. Look at the top right. Clients don't like the financial stuff. Wow. Well, that's a good thing to know, right? The advisor told me that. They don't like this financial stuff. Wow, how am I going to have a financial conversation with people who don't want to talk about financial stuff? Well, first of all, it's partially financial, but it's also about what they care about. And what they care about is they're very charitably inclined. In fact, they have their own charity. They spend a lot of time doing that. And part of why they don't like the financial stuff, candidly, or at least from my read, is that they have all the money that they need and then some, and way more than that, in fact, right? And it's a family business, and it just keeps kicking. It's just very, very robust, this business. Now, a client, or make that the client has a sister that is in a very similar situation. So we're currently strategizing on how to be introduced to that client that sister who is not yet a client of the advisors, but we may be able to duplicate this or something very similar because the sister has a very similar situation. So that's the other benefit of doing this type of work, is that once they can see the real outcome, then it makes it a lot easier for them to make introductions to other people. But we have to, again, help them understand why they would need to do these things, or more importantly, what is the impact of doing the things that we're describing. Excuse me. So the next question is, how big was their estate tax exposure? So they're worth about, 25 million this year. And so if they die this year, the Minnesota tax would be approximately 4.1 million. Now, by the way, if you have a highly concentrated stock and you're worth 25 million, but you have to pay $4 million within 9 months, does that possibly create a liquidity issue for a client that might be worth that much? The answer is maybe, generically. Here it was yes, because it's held in the stock. Are they going to then sell the stock? Right? So they did have a liquidity issue. Now, do you need life insurance specifically for liquidity purposes? No. But what if life insurance showed up income and estate tax free at the exact time that you needed to pay this tax? That might be a very valuable asset to have, right? That's what we're describing. So in 2026, when it rolls back to about 7 million apiece, we're estimating that their total estate tax at that time, both federal and state, is about 10 million or maybe a little bit more. Whoa, that one surprised the clients. They're worth 25 million, but we're telling them that they're going to grow over the next 3 years. By the way, we assumed an 8% growth rate, and the company stock's grown about 12% on average. Okay, so the basis for these numbers, we're at an 8% growth rate, not a 12, which means if it is 12, which is what they've had, these numbers are going to be higher, so they're going to have even a bigger exposure, right? In 2033, we're showing a $21 million exposure. Again, these numbers get very, very big. Now, don't be scared off if you're not working with clients of this size. Just chop a zero off. Okay, and think about those clients that are worth $5 million, but $3 million are in their 401k or their IRA. And think about what the non-spousal beneficiary rules are for an asset like that. If I inherit a $3 million IRA today at 46 years old with the income that I currently have, that's not going to be a very good asset for me to have. Is it possible I might be upset? I won't be upset because it's a $3 million account, but what that really means, it's not a $3 million account, is it? It's $1.5 million account to someone like me who's going to have to take that at my highest marginal tax bracket and take it over a 10-year period of time, right? And so you can have a similar conversation about the cost of taxes and determine whether or not we want to have some liquidity to minimize that through insurance, right? So that was their tax exposure moving forward. And so with my help, how did the advisor effectively position this conversation? And this is basically what he did. He said, I was thinking about you recently. He works with these clients all the time, but he was thinking about them. Are you aware that we have a significant tax change coming up that may affect you negatively? Well, that's timely. And we're just asking the question, are you aware? And then, by the way, the potential change is not a positive change for these clients, it's a negative change. So are you aware of that? And by the way, they were vaguely aware of it, but didn't really know what it means. And the next thing he said is that, we have some proactive solutions that have worked with other clients, and I think that you ought to be aware of them. Are you open to an educational planning meeting with my specialist to discuss further, right? So we have some solutions. I think you ought to be aware of them. Are you open to that kind of conversation? And by the way, they could have said no to that, but they said yes. Why do you suppose they said yes? I assume that they said yes because a very high trust relationship exists, and the advisor says, I think we need to consider this. You need to be educated on this, right? And they want to do the right thing. And so this is how he was able to introduce me and indicate, hey, I've been in business for 30 plus years. I've dealt with these kind of things a number of times, but like anything, it's better to utilize a specialist and somebody who deals with this all day and every day, and effectively said that he's got someone on his team named Rod Crandall, who he's worked with in similar ways and wants to bring us in on our next Zoom meeting. Okay. And so, by the way, when you think about intentional integration of insurance, what we just did here is we helped my advisor identify a client, identified that based upon, in this case, what was going on with estate taxes. Then we helped the advisor position how to have a conversation, which is what you're looking at right here, and then ultimately introduce that client to me. And so we got on Zoom calls together. And now it's up to me to help educate this client on what their options are, what their exposure is, what they need to be thinking about, and then ultimately have them consider what they would like to do, if anything, to solve this potential problem. Okay. So some of the key questions that we asked once I got in front of them via Zoom, by the way, I'm in Chicago and these people are in Minnesota, and I did not meet them in person. And I don't believe we needed to meet in person. I think they probably preferred to be on Zoom, in my opinion. I preferred it. It's highly effective, highly efficient, and we were coordinating multiple people's schedules, including estate planning attorney, their accountant, the wealth advisor, and myself, the insurance specialist. And so I think the most important open-ended question is, what's important to you about your legacy? Right? I like to say that it's so open-ended, and there's no right answer, but what's important? Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about what they said. What's important to you about your legacy? By the way, if they say nothing is important about that, that's important to know as well, because the conversation may not go anywhere. My experience is people don't generally implement any sort of insurance if nothing's important to them about their legacy. Right? But this is a family business. Right? They said something really cool I'm going to share with you in a minute about what their real goal was about their legacy. Also ask them, have they considered the impact of taxes in various forms that could affect your goals, your ability to leave that legacy? Yeah, I know we're getting taxed a lot. But they're not super mad, these clients, about being taxed a lot, in my opinion. I think they're thankful that they live in an environment in the United States and in their business that they can have this much wealth, this much affluency, if you will, and they're okay paying, whatever they feel is their fair share. When you start looking at the actual numbers, they end up being huge. You go, wow, that is a huge tax exposure, and that may be the biggest cost that you are incurring ever in any of your endeavors, right? And then how do you feel about that concentration risk, which they understood what we meant, and they are diversifying away in brokerage accounts and other things. But is their point of view that that's the livelihood of the family? The business is not new, it's old, it is a cash cow, and they understand that they have risk, but they have huge reward. And by the way, we help them diversify that risk by implementing a $20 million life insurance policy that was removed outside of their estate. So we did help diversify away from that concentration risk. So here's the concerns that the client had. When I asked them about what was important to their legacy, I've never had a client say this top left. This was their words. They wanted to make sure they had significant liquidity for maximum flexibility. Like, I'm blown away that the client said that. But by the way, that's one of the outcomes. Okay, if you're doing a good job here, how we motivate clients is through the questions we ask. What's important to you? And when they tell me what's important to me is to have significant liquidity with maximum flexibility, and I can come to them and show them a plan that does exactly that, well, now I've just satisfied their goal. I've just helped motivate them to take action to put that insurance in place, which, look at the top right. They said, Rod, I don't want to be rude, but why would we buy any insurance? We don't need any insurance. We don't have a real need for insurance. To which I said to them, I agree. You don't need insurance, and I would venture to say that most people don't need insurance, but they may want insurance. And if you understand what can be done to appropriately place this asset class for you, you might decide that it's not really a need, but it may be a want. And by the way, would it surprise you, Mr. and Mrs. Clients, and also would it surprise you, the people listening, the advisors, that our biggest cases are written with clients that don't strictly need insurance, but they understand what it can do for them, right? Because again, of the significant tax advantages that life insurance enjoys, okay? They were also concerned that the company might ding them. My health's not perfect, and I know they look at us, I got cholesterol issues and some other things, and there's travel concerns. That charity that they have is actually in a third world country. And that was challenging to understand what are they doing there and how long are they there and how are our insurance companies going to look at them, et cetera. And of course, insurance companies want to ding individuals. The ding was what the client said. They don't want to be dinged. Okay. Well, my word for that is that underwriting is very important, and they don't strictly pass or fail you. They pass and slot you. And so we need to determine, where are you going to be slotted? By the way, that's very important to be a broker in that space, because we have over 50 companies that we deal with. And we can go to those companies on a confidential preliminary basis and say, I've got a guy and I've got a gal, and before I apply, here's what I know about their health, here's what I know about their travel, et cetera. How will you treat them? Now, by the way, at the end of the day, we went to John Hancock with this case. The woman did get a super preferred rating, so she got the best rating, and the gentleman got a preferred plus rating. Now, I have to admit that that helps with how wonderful this design is. And they're 57 years old in great health. A lot of times when we're dealing with this kind of case, they might be 67 or 77 and not in quite as good health, which means that the math doesn't work quite as well to utilize life insurance. Okay? But in this case, it worked out beautifully. So they were concerned about being dinged, and then they were concerned that they could afford the annual premium in the future. Now that might seem odd given their income, but we asked for a significant number. I'm going to share that with you in a minute. So it's a significant number, and they're rightly concerned that they could afford that. Now, by the way, that was alleviated by their wealth advisor very easily by indicating that we've got all of this money in these other accounts and we can reposition dollars to make this happen. From my point of view, I told them that when you're engaged in these kind of structures, you need to be prepared to marry these structures. Do not date these structures. You must marry them. And so if you're concerned that you could afford the annual premium, I'm concerned, and maybe we take a smaller unit. And by the way, generically, they were considering somewhere between $10 and $30 million in total coverage, and we settled in on 20 million. What I want you guys, the advisors, to hear is that I would much rather have them buy a smaller policy that they know they can commit to, because we're in the business of positive outcomes for our clients. And if you've ever implemented an insurance contract and the clients have terminated it, especially in, say, the first 5 years, that's happened to me, and I hate that. I hate it on so many levels. Number one, the client gets hurt when that happens, right? They get hurt. Secondly, they probably don't understand, and they may not be that happy with me because they didn't get a good outcome, right? And that's not the reason that I'm in business, right? And it just kind of hurts my feelings, if you will, to see the beautiful recommendations that I might put in place and have them fall apart. And so I will tell you that I almost anti-sell in this spot about pushing back and indicating, do you know how hurt, how harmed financially you will be if you don't stick with this strategy? I utilize that. I show the first years with the surrender charges, and we don't have all of our cash value. And I make sure to say, are you sure that we can do that? Because again, our job is to motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest, and putting something in place and then terminating in the first few years certainly isn't in their best interest. They would have been better off doing nothing, right? And then that's where all of the negative connotations come with insurance people. Maybe they push them too much, maybe they didn't understand it, all of that stuff. And I just want nothing to do with that, right? We are consultants to our clients. Many of you, if not most of you, are fiduciaries for your clients, and that's very important. All right, so those were the concerns that the clients had. So what do we end up doing? We placed this $20 million second to die policy with an annual premium of $166,713 a year. $166,000 a year. So let's pause there for a minute. So Rod, you have these clients who don't need any insurance at all, and they're writing a check for $166,000 for insurance that they don't need. How is that appropriate for the clients at all? They don't need that, right? And of course, what's the answer? No, they don't need that, but they wanted it. And if you want to understand why, I'll break that down for you, right? Which I've already begun to do, and I'm going to do that for you a little bit more here as we drill in. So the insurance doesn't cost $166,000. That's what we have to contribute to the asset. And what's the asset? The asset's a $20 million policy. Okay, we're contributing $166,000. That's not what it costs. Okay. By the way, that $166,000 the client has. So we're repositioning money that the client already has from perhaps one pocket to another pocket. And by the way, the pocket we're putting it in is completely free of income tax and estate tax. Is there any value to that? How big is that value, by the way? Is that it? What's the cost of income and estate taxes, right? What's the cost? Okay. This did take us 9 months from start to finish. Now, I don't want that to scare you or turn you off. You go, well, why would I want to engage in a 9-month process? Well, maybe you wouldn't, but maybe you'd utilize me and my team and we would drive that. But in those 9 months, we had 6 Zoom appointments with the clients and the client's advisors, totaled about 5 hours. My estimation is I also spent about 5 hours not in front of clients, developing this case, talking with George on my team, talking with the advanced market people that we have, talking with John Hancock, putting together different designs, etc. So I believe I was in this 10 hours. I believe the wealth advisor was in this 5 hours. Okay, total over 9 months. Okay. And through that process, as I mentioned, we did coordinate with their estate planning attorney, because technically what we did is we applied for the coverage so that we could solidify the pricing structure. And we applied individually for these individuals to make sure that we could get the coverage and determine exactly what the premiums were going to be. And we did that first before establishing an ILET. And the reason that we did that is if we establish the ILET, but we have nothing to go in the ILET, because maybe we couldn't get them approved for some reason, or maybe the math didn't work, that would be problematic for the clients. So instead, what we did is we got a underwriting approval for their health. Then we had the estate planning attorney like literally on call. That indicates the moment that we have approval and we know what those numbers are going to look like, then we can get the attorney to go ahead and draft the ILET and make the gift to the ILET checking account while we then reapply in the name of the ILET. It gets a little bit technical, but understand that it's a process that I drove. And this would be another reason if you find yourself in these types of cases, if you're not familiar with that process, it might be very advantageous for you to use me and my team to do that. And so after all of that, it was 9 months from start to finish. So we started like last September and we finished up, I believe, in June of this past year. 9 months, about 10 of my hours, about 5 of the advisor's hours. And so what outcomes were created by doing this? So we created a new asset of $20 million, just like this, for $166,000. Now, by the way, not to be funky about it, we didn't need $166,000 to put a $20 million asset in place right now. We needed one monthly premium to do that. Just think about the leverage of insurance. Insurance is mammoth leverage. Okay, so we created a new asset that didn't have $20 million outside of the estate. Okay, that has guarantees. We're going to talk a little bit more about what those are. Non-correlated to the market and income and estate tax-free for their heirs. So not only did we create this new asset of 20 million, but we also are taking 166,000 from inside their gross taxable estate and moving it outside of their gross taxable estate, right? So over 10 years, we're going to remove $1.6 million from their estate to service this $20 million asset. Look at that bottom line, which really should have been the top line here. That was the client's goals when I asked them what was important. They said they wanted significant liquidity for maximum flexibility. We just gave them $20 million of cash at exactly the time that they need it. When do they need it? They've both died, right? So it's not really them, it's their heirs. If they don't care about their heirs or don't care about their legacy, how important is this type of structure or strategy going to be for them? That's why we have to ask what is important to our clients and make sure that we are right on what's important to them when we look at the outcomes that were created. So you should be asking, and the client should be asking, everyone should be asking, is that a good deal? 166 grand for 20 million, is that a good deal? And the answer is, tell me when the client's going to die and I'll tell you exactly how good of a deal it is. So there's something called internal rate of return. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that. This indicates the 166 in versus the $20 million out at various ages. So if I have to pay premiums for 10 years and then they both pass away, which I agree would be very unlikely, not only were they approved at one of the best health classes, but they're only 57 years old. But God forbid something happens and they both pass away 10 years from now, they have a 43% return. That's income and estate tax free. Okay. Well, what about 20 years out? That's at age 77. Well, it's 15%. Why? 20 million is 20 million, but we've had to put in 10 more years of 166,000. Right? I bet most of you are running retirement timelines out to age 95, right? So if we go out year 40, they were 57, that's age 97. That is a 4.78% return. I know we've got higher interest rates today than we have in the past, but what you have here is you have an asset class that is going to pay at least 4.78% on a income and estate tax-free basis, and might be much higher than that depending upon when death occurs. That's a unique asset class. You know what else makes it unique? We know the exact ending value of this asset, whether it's on day 1 or on day 50. Do we know the exact ending asset of any of their portfolio or any of the closely held stock? And the answer is no. That doesn't make this asset better than the other assets. It just makes it complementary, right? So you look at these IRRs, to me, they're ridiculous. I mean, honestly. But part of why they're ridiculous is we'd usually have this kind of case with people that are 20 years older. Okay, for the purposes of this, maybe I should have grabbed that number. My guess is that if they were 20 years older, the premium would double on them from 166 to 320, which really means they'd probably do 166 anyways, which really means that 166 would fund 10 million, which means that all of these numbers would be much lower. We wouldn't be that concerned about a 40-year internal rate of return though, because these people would have bought at 77 years old, right? And so it is better to have these conversations early. Now, by the way, as an aside, I've talked to a number of estate planning attorneys who are already getting very, very busy with these anticipated changes in 2026. And I'm hearing anecdotal things about we're not even going to be available in the second half of 2025 for anyone that isn't already engaged with us. These people are going to be inundated by and large with these changes. And so what that means is that if you have a client that needs to be talking about this, I think it would behoove you and the client to start doing that now instead of waiting to the deadline. And then we're going to be in this fire sale type scenario. Okay. Now, this product was guaranteed to age 89. Okay, meaning no matter how the product performs, it will last to age 89 as long as they pay their $166,000 death benefit. Now, assuming that they earn 4.6% interest, it lasts forever. And by the way, that product is paying a little bit more than that interest today. Now, I have to tell you, we talked to the clients and the advisor about a fully guaranteed solution. We looked at Prudential as well, that would guarantee the solution to age 120 no matter what the underlying performance did. I happen to have favored that, but it was about 15% more expensive to get that guarantee. The advisor said, listen, I'm not concerned about that. If for some reason this doesn't perform at 4.6, we have the right to contribute more dollars into the account, which will allow it to last longer. Now, it might seem odd to say, well, we have the ability to put more money in. Well, that's a bad thing, right? Because you need more money. Well, yeah, but if we take 15% more, let's just call it $20,000 just for easy math. If we can pay $20,000 less for 20 years, that saves us $400,000. If I have to true this up because we have lagging performance, well, we've already saved those ongoing premiums. What I really want you to understand is when we get clients down to this, we go, is this an asset class you'd want to put in place? If so, what's your budget for that, or what's the death benefit we're solving for? And then we can create a fully guaranteed solution, or in this case, a 3/4 guaranteed solution, in my opinion, and we can show them both. Now, by the way, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that these clients, I was prepared that these clients might want a little bit of both. Let's put 10 million in the fully guaranteed structure. Let's put 10 million in the 3/4 guaranteed structure, right? So effectively, that's just a honing in and refining the asset class of the design and the funding. Okay. So once again, we improved their overall estate value by over $20 million, and we did generate over $130,000 first year commission, which I split with the advisor. The advisor spent 5 hours and I spent 10. When you think about what I'm in this business for, what I'm in this business for is to help clients and ultimately make money. And if I help clients, then I make money, and then I can help more clients and I can make more money. And so when you think about this exact case, this is as good as it gets. 10 hours, $65,000. And how much did I help the clients? By $20 million plus, right? Now, again, If this was $2 million, then this would be 13,000. Guess what? It would still take you the same 10 hours, right? And in fact, on the advisor side, it was 5 hours. And so this can be profitable business. No, we don't get our ongoing revenue. There are small renewals. Certainly the AUM business is a wonderful long-term business, but being able to improve clients' position and drive this kind of revenue can be very, very significant. And I heard it say that you can have a great year in one day. And that's certainly what this was and what we were able to do. Okay. So with that, that's sort of my comments around that case. Now, if you liked what we talked about, all of this again is around identification and positioning. So we have to be figuring out what clients can we identify to be able to talk about some sort of conversation around this. And then how would we do it? Where are the entry points? Are we just going to pick up the phone and give them a call right now? A lot of advisors don't want to do that, which is fine. Well, maybe it's an agenda item on the review, whether that's a quarterly or annual review. Maybe estate planning or risk management is on that agenda. And then we go to them and ask them, hey, are you aware of some of the things that are changing? You know, we have some strategies that have worked for other clients. I'd love for you to understand what those are so that you have the lay of the land. Would you be open to that kind of conversation? I have those conversations with a partner of mine. We've worked with a number of clients together. I'd like to bring him into the next meeting to the extent that that makes sense. And now we're right into it, right? Can we, again, define the risk and the consequences? We have to ask our clients what's important to them, right? We don't ask clients, do you want to buy a $20 million second to die policy and write me a $166,000 check? We already know the answer to that. We have to have permission to educate clients about these powerful strategies. Do we have your permission? If we have them, then we can get consideration. That bottom is something that I look at all the time. Even I don't like what insurance is. Insurance is contractually driven. It's 100 pages. It's confusing. It's opaque. Clients make that insurance companies are judging me. The paperwork is onerous. I heard the commissions were too high. We just proved the commissions were too high. And, you know, all of that's what insurance is. But what does it do? It creates maximum liquidity for maximum flexibility. Make sure that our clients' goals, dreams, and aspirations are fulfilled. Make sure they have the dollars that they need. Make sure the family business can stay intact and we don't have to sell shares. Maybe the family business is a farm. We're going to have to sell 40 acres in order to pay the estate tax. Right? Are you aware that this is even potentially an issue, Mr. and Mrs. Client? Would you like to be educated on what some of your options are? Okay. So with that, I mean, what do we do next? You know, our next Coach's Corner is on November 16th. So again, that's the third Thursday of each month at 1 o'clock. We have an insurance advisor toolbox. If you haven't checked it out, reach out to us. All of our best stuff is in here. We've got scripts, we've got identification pieces, we've got all of our coaches' corners. There's a lot of good stuff in there. If you haven't seen that, please reach out to me or Andrew or George, and we'll make sure that you get that. At the end of the day, if we do this right, back to motivating our clients to operate in their own best interest, we actually do the right thing. We demonstrate fiduciary capacity. We drive revenue. We actually protect AUM, right? If these clients don't have this insurance and they have to pay income and estate taxes, where are those dollars probably going to come from? And they may be coming from the AUM. And of course, that's the principal way by which many of you are earning your income today. And then lastly, it does create competitive immunity. Right? You still have, quote, insurance guys, the Northwestern Mutuals of the world that are calling on clients like this, going, oh, your advisor didn't bring this strategy to you? Now, by the way, in a high trust environment, we just might find that that comes right to you anyways. But creating competitive immunity is important because never forget that your clients are other people's prospects, right? So with that, I want to share a couple other pieces with you. I don't think I stopped sharing there, but I want to. If you just bear with me for 1 second, I want to flop to another screen and start. Of course, I'm having trouble, so sorry about the technical difficulty. And no one can see you. Click to share your webcam. So I'm just clicking any button that I feel like, apparently. No one can see your screen. Click to start screen sharing, but then it's automatically sharing that screen. So let me just move this over here then instead. All right, see, I'm nothing if not creative. All right, so this is what I believe is the single best sheet US Advisors has. We call this identifying insurance opportunities. Who do you know? This sheet has 16 different prompts, if you will, 16 different who do you know that does what? What we've been talking about today is wealth transfer and legacy planning. Who do you know that has assets 2 million or more, want to create a lasting legacy for kids and grandkids? Maybe they want to protect their assets from creditors. They might want to have some control over money for future generations. They might even be charitably inclined. If you have clients like this, the conversation we walk through today might be important. Okay? I mentioned the qualified plans, that $1 million, $2 million, $3 million qualified plan that might end up in a non-spousal inherited situation, right? Let's talk to those people. Who are those people? 59 and a half or older. They don't need their qualified plan for their own needs, right? They're going to be taking RMDs. How many of your clients are taking RMDs, paying the taxes, and reinvesting in your brokerage account? If you have those clients, you should talk to me, Andrew, and George. We might find that the best thing to do, perhaps, is to consider taking some of those RMDs and buying a second to die policy that's going to have similar rates of return to what I just described to you and can create the tax-free dollar. Even if it doesn't have an estate tax component, just income tax, they can own it themselves, and then they may have a pile of cash. What I've seen is that a lot of times the RMD can actually buy as much insurance as the entire value of the IRA. Okay, so if you're not sure what I mean there, reach out to us. We'll show you some numbers because again, it's about education so that we can consider. And if we educate you on some of these things and you don't like them and you don't want to consider them for your clients, I think that's still a win because I think right now a lot of people go, well, that 7-year-old client doesn't need insurance. And I go, no, they don't. But there's a $750,000 income tax exposure for their son. Is that something that they're concerned about? And would they like to learn some strategies that have worked for other clients in similar situations? So I would just share that piece with you. The IRS has a nice website, if you can believe that. It was hard for me to believe it. Around gift taxes and estate taxes, they have a nice FAQ piece. So if you're interested in looking at any of these pieces, please reach out to me or Andrew or George on that basis. But this is a nice website that I think has some value. Last thing I want to show you quickly is our toolbox. So we have our toolbox here set up: identify, position, implement, and introduce. And so again, going through this toolbox would be a full hour or more to show you what's in here. But just understand that in each case, we have different profiling tools. We have our marketing library. We've got different scripts. We've got historical tax charts. We've got questionnaires for business owners, et cetera, and the like. And so with that, that's all my prepared remarks. Tom, is it possible we could open up for questions just to see if there's anybody out there that has any questions for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If you do have any questions, you can submit them. Currently, I'm not able to open up the audio, but if you have any questions, you can submit them on the GoToWebinar menu, and I could read them on your behalf. So if there are any questions, we'll take a moment here and see if there are any.
Great. And while we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put up some of our contact info here. And so here is Andrew's information. He is our senior annuity and insurance consultant. I know a number of you work with him, and so certainly if you do, you ought to have his contact info. We've got George Steele here as well, and George helps me an awful lot with what I do, and he's also very good. And I often say, if you know what you want, you ought to go directly to George and he can get that. If you're not sure what you want, a lot of times those calls come to me and we can sort of sift through what are you dealing with and what needs to be done. And so then finally, here is my contact info. Again, I'm the Chief Integration Officer here, a made up title, but we did that because I'm the officer that helps intentionally integrate insurance into a wealth advisor's practices. So with that, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in, but feel free to reach out directly to me or George or Andrew. Please join us next month for our final Coach's Corner. And I guess I'll leave you how we leave our Monday morning sales meetings, which is let's all be great leaders, let's help our clients, and let's drive revenue. I appreciate all of you and have a wonderful day.